Greetings, Grand Saturn's Day, Grand Risings. I'm going to work on that language again. I do believe in the power of words. How are you? It's Saturn's Day, Sabbath's Day. So it's another day that some magic has been, is being used. So this is typically a day where people will relax. Unless, when I was little, it was like cartoons and shopping. A lot of shopping done on Saturday, right? So that's, if you're into astrology, a lot of people know about Saturn. Saturn is a super intense energy, and Saturn was considered the first sun, which I have a theory about. From a lot of my research and stuff. And so I brought a lot of my books out to the car. I'm in the car because it's warm. And it's easy, right? Plus those colors are kind of pretty, I think. So I hope you're doing well as can be. I wanted to share a few things that came to me. I was like, how do I share this? So this is mostly a message about natural witches or natural gifted, so to speak, people who I think there's a purpose for that. I think there's a reason why some of the natural witches or warlocks or magical beings, so to speak, may have grown up not actually understanding their natural magic. It literally reminds me of Harry Potter. It's like, when you're like, what? And certain things happening with other people or certain situations happen and literally it's somewhat shocking to everyone involved, including the person who might have been joking around saying things. So I'm going to share a few of my stories with you. At a very young age, my intuition was pretty heightened, and I used to have super intense dreams. And I used to wonder, how do I have dreams like this? I'm just alive. I kind of understood that dreams should be happening to people who were older, especially if they seemed like dreams from the past. So I used to think I was from another planet, right? And that part of me lived on another planet. And when I would dream these dreams, that person on that planet was showing me some things, right? Wasn't totally off, was I? And the first thing that happened was, and I might have shared this video on here. I know I shared this before. I'm having a burp. Excuse me, coffee this morning. Excuse me. When my mom's Jeep got stolen, it wasn't really technically stolen. It was like the neighbors, somebody borrowed it, but didn't tell anybody, right? And this is in like the 70s, mid 70s. And we were taking my brother to school the next morning. I had a dream the night before that on our way to take my brother to school, we would pass the Jeep on the other side of the freeway going towards our house. And by the time we got home, it would be there, right? And so sure enough, that exact spot the next day on the freeway, I see the Jeep going back that way. And I say something to my mom, and she's like, that's crazy. You did not do that, right? And then I went to camp, and I remember having a dream that the next day a package would come with my camera and something else in it. And the next day, a package came with camera. Oh, shoes. I got a pair of shoes I used to want. I left my shoes behind or something like that. And this continued. For years. And in my high school years, it really freaked me out because I would have, I didn't want some of those dreams to come true. And I was able to see things happen in the future. And I'm glad the story has changed, but at the time I had a vision as a sophomore in high school that one of my friends was going to get in a really bad car accident and almost die. And so it's my senior year, and we're all partying, right? We're all having this big party, and I knew it was that day. I knew it. So, and I had a car. My parents had some money, so I had a car, and because I could feel it was that day, I purposely was the sober driver all the way until 6 a.m, which is when the bars open, or when the store opens again. The stores would open at 6:30 so that you could buy more alcohol, right? So we get to this house, and I was like, okay. And I even said, please wake me up at 6:30. I will drive you guys to the store. They did not. And yes, they got a horrible car accident and almost died. But they did not. And both of them, are okay to this day. But I don't want that kind of thing to happen, right? I don't want to know that stuff in advance. So other things would happen. I would say something, it would happen. One time when I was driving home, one of my friends, she's coming to stay with me. We live in the same little tiny town. And she's got her foot up on the dashboard. She's trying to show me something on her foot. And she's like, look. And we're going around a corner. And I was like, no, wait a second. Then I pulled way over to the side. I went super slow, and this big Mack truck came around the corner. If I would have looked at her foot, we would have smashed right into that Mack truck. And then coming home from a party one time, I was an asshole. I was sober, but I was an asshole. I had 4 people in my car, 3 people in the back seat, one person in the front seat. And I had raced this guy down the mountain, and I was doing pretty good. And we're almost finished, and I kind of relaxed. And my car started spinning. And I remember looking at everyone in the car and thinking, oh my God. And then we start sliding towards a tree, like, whoo. And I'm praying, oh my God, please don't let us hit that tree. Please don't let us hit this tree. And all of a sudden, it was like this. Whoo. We were going to hit the tree. And then the car just went sideways and didn't hit the tree. Popped a tire off. That's what we did. That was it. And we all just kind of sat there for a minute. And so I'm doing this video because I'm recognizing I see a lot of spiritual leaders out there. I see a lot of spiritual influencers. And I do hear a lot of influence as to, if you're a natural witch, you got to get some teaching. So where do we find the teaching from a natural witch that has also somewhat no training? Does that make sense? A natural witch that learned how to train themselves, because that's what I feel like I'm doing. Most of the religions, when I went to church, I didn't really like it, and I didn't really understand the tongues thing. I mean, I get it now, but I remember feeling like, I don't think most of these people are speaking tongues. And I remember watching one of those cop shows back in the day. I think they still have them, but I don't really watch TV. And a woman in the South, the police had come to her house, and she was so upset, and it was the first time I ever actually saw real tongues. And she just went into tongues, and it was like everything froze. The cameraman, the cops, everything just kind of froze in her house. She finished with her tongues and then went right back to the part of the sentence where she had left off before she went into tongues. And she had walked around the house for a minute, and I just remember thinking, ooh, okay, that's what that is. That's what that is. But I heard because I was part black that I came from hell. I heard this from a Mormon girl that I grew up with. Also, most of the people around were not. There was a reservation nearby where I got to listen to drumming, and I got to hear, from even where I lived, because sound travels up, and we lived up above the valley where the indigenous people of that area were assigned to. Not really the best land, just saying, government. Anyhow, and so I had a little bit of that influence, but there were like little churches down the road, and everywhere I went, there were always it was very, I think, everywhere you go is pretty Christian influence, which I'm not against. I just think that there is a strong Christian influence in this culture, and it teaches people to be afraid of things like interpreting dreams or being able to see things. Like, only God is allowed to have that power, and if you have it, then you must be doing something evil to have it, right? So in my experience, I kind of went down the Wicca path, and I liked it. But I remember right at the time I started learning about Wicca, I had met a man. I had moved from, I used to live in Washington State, and I was in college at the time. And I moved from Seattle to Olympia. And I had transferred jobs. I was working at Sherry's, which is really interesting because that all links back to my family, which is a whole nother story. But I had transferred, and I was going to school and working, and I realized, like, no, I didn't want to do that anymore. Plus, my job was like almost 40 minutes from my house. And I was always working until 9 and had a bunch of homework. And I just thought, I can't do both. So I'm going to try to figure out some other job. So I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I think it was like 1 or 2 days before I was completely done with the job. And this man comes and sits at the bar, which always drives me crazy because I tend to not see the people at the bar. It's very bad because when I trained as a waitress, I was mostly to focus off of the bar, not focus on the bar. Don't focus on the bar. So I had to really remember the bar is mine, right? And so when he came inside of the bar, I was like, gosh darn it, make sure you remember. And we were about to close, so it made it a little easier. And he introduces himself, and he reaches his hand out, and I shake his hand. And as he's holding my hand, he says to me, I can't remember his name. I want to say something like Brian or Michael. And he's like, and I'm a clairvoyant, and if you have any questions, let me know. And I kind of let go of his hand, and I said, are you a clairvoyant, like you can read my mind, or that you can see things? And he was like, well, a little bit of both. And I was like, well, I already know what I want to know. And he's like, okay. And he was like, well, you can ask me when I come back next time. And I was like, well, I'm quitting, I won't be here. And he's like, oh. He didn't really say much. So I walked past him, and he says, your dad was a lawyer and your mom's into horses. And I was like, now I look back, I'm like, is this a setup? Just kidding. And I was like, whoa, these are my adopted parents. And then he just kind of kept going. And at one point he mentioned that I had a grandmother that wanted me to pray more. And I had just bought some Wicca books for super cheap at my college, and I'd already started looking at them, and I started bringing some of the practices in. And a lot of the stuff I already believe because I look at nature, and I know that we as humans are half our mother and half our father, so I can see both the masculine and feminine. And I saw a lot of feminine influence in the Wicca religion, and also the Wicca, beliefs, and a lot of nature worshiping. And I was like, yeah, I totally can get down with that. But I'm not going to drop down to my knees and continue praying like I used to. I don't know why, but I'm just not. And I told my grandmother that because I could feel it was something Catholic. And I already knew that my grandmother on my biological mom's side was a devout Catholic, right? So I just kind of told her, like, but I'm going to be checking out, because I'd heard this message from God basically saying, hey, have you thought about maybe I might also have some female aspects since you're created in my image, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about that. And I was like waiting for male God to be like, don't you think like that, coming down and punishing me. And so and then I basically, through that college And after I left Sherry's and that guy, like, I still think about him because I ended up finding my biological family. He said my father was from the New York area, which, if my DNA is true, that might be true, but my biological mother confirmed that, basically. Like, he said he was from there, so, or from that area. And so I could feel things from my grandmother, and there was one time me and two of my girlfriends were outside during the summertime, and I joked around about we can make it snow, and it started snowing. I've literally seen portals open, and the person that was with me at the time started yelling at me, like, what'd I do? And I was like, I don't know what I did. And that's the thing, like, if I'm a natural witch and those things are happening on accident, and I did, like, put a spell on somebody back in the day thinking it would be no big deal, and it was a love spell, right? It wasn't like a, mean spell. It was a love spell, but whoops, I didn't, at the time I was like, yes, no, like, oh shit, it actually worked. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't really realize this. So I think I'm just sharing this because I think if you're a natural witch but didn't actually grow up around other witches who know they're witches and are shown how to be a witch, because in the natural realm of things, the messages that I get are very similar to a lot of the others, but also different, because I don't know, it's like more elemental, and also there's no gender or class in it. I notice in a lot of the magical realms, or in the occult realm, there's a sense of hierarchy and or betterness. Well, I look at it like this: if everything's been mistaught, that's impossible. If every single thing's been mistaught, there is no betterness. There's just truth, and we need to find it. And what I've discovered in all of this magical storytelling and walking down that Wicca to everything else path, the more and more and more I dig into religion and crystals and Reiki and vibrations and all of that stuff, the more it comes back to either a circle, which is defined by humans as feminine, or a goddess. And what's really cool is I'm talking about how things have been mistaught. Kumaru and Dane Calloway are both, they've been leading us down the path. We're not from Africa, we're from here. Yeah, I actually think I have a true story that goes with that, and I'd really like to figure that out. At this point, I'm pretty sure I'm right, which sounds really snobby, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Okay. They are leading us back to the path. They are leading us factually through the truth that we have been diasporaed around this continent, told that we came from Africa or from other places with African roots, so to speak, when in actuality we were already here. And so if that's been spun, then so has been spun our African spirituality, and so has been spun so many things. And so if the truth is that we're from here, then wouldn't this magic and this knowledge be the quote-unquote highest of all of those? And if that's also the case, that's not how they looked at things. Even in ancient Egypt, there was a place you could go to, or why do I say ancient? In Egypt, when the pyramids and people were living there at that time, people could go, and I believe that this is how things are supposed to be, because then we wouldn't have such a screwed up world. And this is why they taught us that the symbol for one looks like this, which is in reality, and they start breaking us apart, blah blah blah. We would help each other heal, even if the person's a jerk. Like, we know that unhappy people are mean, the happy people are nice, right? So, or nicer at least, you know. So if somebody's mean, they either have, we used to say, a bug up their ass. And so in Egypt, they would clean your body out through your bum, rinse out your intestines, because your intestines, if you've been eating a lot of foods and taking these pharmaceutical things, especially cheeses and milks and stuff, probably most of what you're taking into your body isn't even getting into your body. The nutrients and stuff you're trying to get into your body, they're not even getting in there. And the Egyptians used to rinse out this is where the whole enema and all this thing, they stole that from that knowledge, which came from even further back knowledge. There's been surgeries, brain surgeries, and all kinds of surgeries going on for thousands of years, because the feminine carries oftentimes a whole nother being inside of her body, and sometimes more than one. And so she's going to figure out how to heal herself and her negative one whole being into the body, into the world, right? I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to share some books and stuff with you along this path. So I did not bring my Wicca books out. It's basically Wicca 1 and Wicca 2. The second one is the Book of Shadows. That has herbs in there. I have some runes tattooed on me from that book. I learned about those there, and it's really interesting because, like, years later I end up finding out, like, this one literally means, like, my name. This is my witch eye, right? And then of course it's in an ohm, right? In an ohm. It's on my right side of my body, my power side. And so there's those books, okay? And that was kind of like my introduction to the goddess. And then let's see. Somebody gave me this book, the 365. And in this book, I learned about, like, Persephone. I think it's Persephone, who's the goddess of mead, and then Odin comes and steals it. Like, just saying, like, once again, and Odin is now known as, and I like Odin. I was so disappointed. That Odin is now known as the god of poetry. Well, he stole it from a female who had it first. Okay, this book, The Encyclopedia of Spirits, The Ultimate Guide to the Magic of Fairies. I heard about this from watching Priestess Aset Ra Amun, or Amun Ra. Okay. She's a great influencer. She's another good magical teacher. Share on Facebook. YouTube. Sorry, on YouTube. Okay, and then let's see what other. I also, from watching her, the Sybil's book, Mami Watu. That's a great one. It's really small, but it has so much information in it. And then from the same priestess I just mentioned, this one I'm reading. I'm not too far in it, but okay. And let's see. And then also, this is a pretty good one. Okay, the Goddess Path. All right, and then on the Reiki note, because I really feel it all ties in together. Okay, and the path of actually healing. This is an amazing book, amazing book. She goes into the healing. And same with this goddess book. She actually, at the end of each one, she's got like Kali in here, Oshun. At the end of each one, she gives kind of like a step-by-step guide to help us through the goddess path and the goddess healing. And then I got this book when I first was getting Reiki, starting to learn Reiki. And she's got more updated books. And I think there's another person, but I haven't read that book. This book was really nice. And then for the stones, this book doesn't have pictures in it. This is why I have also the Crystal Bible by Judy Hall. That's a really good one because it does have pictures in it. And she also has a part 2. Yet some of those stones I have still yet to hear of. So that's kind of interesting. And this has a lot. Mariposite is not in here because that's a fairly new stone. And so I'll just give you guys a little hint. And I did bring a stone out here to share with you guys before I jump off. Mariposite is right near Yosemite. Mariposa is right near Yosemite. That's where Mariposite comes from. So you're going to have a lot of kind of like ancient energy, a lot of indigenous energy. There can be some core heart healing in this, and it can be used to help heal the planet and help around with trees and stuff. And then this stone is purple lepidolite with pink tourmaline in it. Great for love and reflection as far as like heavy energies like Wi-Fi and that kind of thing. All right, I'm just about out of time. Thanks for watching. Take care of you, and see you next time.